So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the ADHD Reframed Project podcast with me, Emma Craven. I am the host, and welcome back to the listeners. This is episode 27, I believe. I don't know. My brain is a little bit frazzled today. But today I'm joined by Stu Coleman. So, Stu is the husband of Georgina or George, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, I think. So, yes, Stu, do you just want to introduce a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I'm Stu Coleman. I am George's husband. That's my biggest claim to fame. George is amazing, as I'm sure those that listen to the podcast will testify to. Myself, I've spent most of my career working in advertising. I was diagnosed with ADHD about 4 years ago after my sons were diagnosed. But it's a story there that I'm sure we'll get into. And I left the advertising industry back end of last year to retrain as an ADHD coach and to launch a business that helps organizations understand neurodiversity within their organization. So kind of complete career change and really into the neurodiversity space, and I absolutely love it.
So, wow, yeah. I mean, let maybe we could start off by just talking about your diagnosis journey, then, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So during lockdown, so I've got 3 sons and I've got a stepson, George's son. So during lockdown, my 2 youngest, which are twins, both said to me within a very short space of time from each other that they were struggling a lot during lockdown with their kind of mental health and finding things really difficult. And Will, one of my twins, said to me, "I think it's ADHD." And until then, ADHD had not been something that had existed in my life. I'd never even thought about it. It's not something that had even crossed my mind that it could be something that my children have or anything beyond that. And to condense a fairly long process, we ended up speaking with a psychiatrist who diagnosed both of them with ADHD, which was a huge relief for them. They started a medication and completely changed their lives, which was fantastic to see. And I'd been going along with them to their psychiatry appointments for about 6 months. I go in, meet them, leave them to it for an hour, and go and sit down and chat with the psychiatrist at the end. And he turned around to me after about 6 months one day and said to me, "You do know you've got it as well, don't you?" And honestly, it was one of those kind of Joey and Friends moments where his jaw hits the floor and he just kind of stares at everyone like, "What?" It's a real kind of bolt out of the blue, not something I was expecting in any way at all. But it was a really surreal experience of suddenly my life just all kind of slotted into place. Suddenly all the pieces of the puzzle that for years I just thought I was really crap at being being an adult, and I didn't know how to do it properly. And why did I struggle with emotions, or why did I struggle with forgetfulness, and all these kind of things? All of a sudden, it's like, oh, that's why that makes sense. And of course, being ADHD and impulsive, the first thing I did was go out and get myself a tattoo to celebrate the fact that I've got ADHD. So I've got a light bulb with cogs in it. And it
Nice.
says, "To find myself is the final frontier." Like I say, typical ADHD impulsivity. But that really started me on a journey of questioning and looking into myself, my behaviors, my experiences throughout life, and reframing them through this kind of ADHD lens. And I know, people talk about lots of things when they get their diagnosis and this kind of sense of awareness or awakening, but it really was this sense of reliving moments throughout my life where I just go, now that makes sense, or, oh, now I realize why that was happening, or now I could see why I was struggling, or why I acted in a certain way. And it was a really, I'm going to say cathartic, that's perhaps the wrong word for it, but a really nice experience in many ways of being able to kind of look at that through a different lens, but challenging at the same time because it brought up lots of emotion, lots of feeling, that kind of ADHD grief that people talk about. So yeah, that was 4 years ago, and I've been on that journey since of kind of learning about myself and getting more comfortable with who I am and how my brain works. That was a very long answer, so hopefully that was okay.
No. There's no long answers and no long questions, no long answers. But my experience was similar, so I'd never even considered that I remotely had ADHD, and I had the stereotypical understanding of a naughty little boy running around misbehaving and being, a pain in the classroom. So when a lady that I worked with I got promoted at work and I moved to sit next to the lady, and she said to me one day, "You do know you've got ADHD, don't you, Emma?" And I was just like, I laughed in her face. It's a little bit embarrassing to say, but I laughed in her face. I was just like, "No, I haven't got ADHD. I'm not a boy and I'm not being disruptive." And she's like, "Well, I've got ADHD and I have an ADHD radar." Um, and funnily enough, guess what? I've got ADHD. So
Yeah.
but I like that you just said, like for me, in the last few years, like I'm basically building my life around having ADHD and being a late diagnosed adult with ADHD.
Yeah.
So you kind of briefly mentioned trying your best to adult and
Yep.
not necessarily being like super successful at it. I think they not maybe your exact words, but so what did that
Yeah.
look like for you then before your diagnosis?
Yeah. So, I've always struggled with. Let me start again, because I think it's important to say that I haven't spent my life going, everything's awful. I've had a great life.
Yeah.
I've had a good career. I've got a wonderful wife. I've got some lovely kids. I don't look back and go, "Oh, I wish it was all different." But I do look back and go, um, things that I found difficult throughout my life are emotions that get really big and really strong really quickly. Um, and again, I just thought that was normal, and I was just really bad at managing them. But no, I would find that kind of emotional dysregulation, that emotional intensity, something that appeared a lot throughout my life. And when I look at kind of some of the experiences with my kids and with George, my wife, there is a little bit of, I can now look at that and go, well, perhaps I wouldn't have responded in that way if I'd known about my ADHD, or perhaps I would have had a better way of expressing it or understanding it. I often use an analogy when I try to explain to people of, it's like filling a water balloon really, really quickly. And because I didn't know that that was what was going on, everybody tried to grab hold of the water balloon or to stop it expanding or pop it to get rid of the pressure. But of course, you pop a water balloon, everybody just gets wet. Now I go, what I need is just for everybody to step back for a moment, give space to this kind of expanding balloon, and then it will kind of go back down again. It will take its kind of own life of going back down again. So that's that kind of reframing of that, I think, is a important part of kind of the experience. Excuse that, my front door. A really important part of the experience. A really important part of the experience that I've had of kind of looking back and understanding it. I think the other bits that stood out that I now look at and see that they were very much ADHD driven were my school reports would say things like, Stuart's got a lovely smile and really engaging, but he's a bit lazy, doesn't work very hard. Or Stuart loves the creative side of it. He's got really creative brains, great in art, but you put him in English and he just doesn't want to put the effort in. And so I look at things like that, or I look at clumsiness. I know it's a silly thing, but I would always walk into things or drop things or stub my toe and things like that. But I now look at and see that they're part of that kind of ADHD experience that at the time throughout my life just thought were me being rubbish at doing things, or me being forgetful, or easily frustrated at things. And say it's that reframe is such an important part of realizing that I'm not broken. I think that's the phrase that I often talk about when I talk to people about this is, I'm not broken. I've realized I'm not broken. I'm not rubbish at being an adult. I've just got a brain that processes things differently and works in a different way, and it's trying to operate in a world that it's not necessarily designed for.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think I could have. Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
it's
yeah,
it is. I said earlier, an awakening. It's a real moment of understanding how your brain works. But one other example, just because I think it's relevant. Emotional intensity, not just emotional dysregulation, but emotional intensity. I could cry at anything. I watch Long Lost Family, and I will sit there and I'll have this gut wrenching sadness or sense of justice for this person that was adopted as a child or left as a child, and it just consumes me, and it brings me to tears. Or I can be watching a film, and suddenly I'll just start crying at the moment, because I get I can really live the emotions that these people on the screen are having, whether they be fictional or real. And again, I always just used to thought, well, no, what's wrong with me? Other people don't do this. And now I understand that's a part of how my brain works. And actually, it's a really powerful strength or skill if it's used in the right way to be able to understand and empathize with people. So that reframing of what I saw as difficulties or challenges are now skills or tools that I can use if I know what they are and when they show up. And that suddenly becomes a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar. I get emotionally invested on things that I'm either watching or, even if it's a film or even just EastEnders. Like I watch EastEnders. It's the only soap. Oh no, Home and Away as well. They're the two things that I like to watch every week.
Yeah.
And I do get invested in but also I do find, like, I don't cry very often, but when I do cry, I can't stop crying. It's weird. And one of the storylines on EastEnders has been around dementia, and
Yeah.
my grandma had dementia, and like it just opened up. I mean, she unfortunately, she passed away when I was 16. So she's been gone a very long time, but it just opens up that kind of the feelings, and then I start crying, and then it takes me a while to stop crying again. And luckily, my partner didn't think I was insane when I did it for the first time quite a few years ago. But he now sees that as it's it's just how I am and who I am. And it happens, but it doesn't. There was a film that we watched about someone bullying a little boy because he had a funny, can't remember what it was called. But if there's anything that's kind of quite that I can link into my past, maybe, then it just it unearths the emotion, and then I need like a minute just to cut, or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20, just to calm down from it. But but it's weird because I always feel better after I've cried. And I
Yep.
know that that's an emotional release. I'm obviously holding on to them emotions, and I've held
Yeah,
on to them
absolutely.
for a long time.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you just saying, you're proud of that. You should be proud of that. The fact
It,
that you are in touch with your emotions.
it's part of who I am, and I think that's that's the one big um, life shift that ADHD or diagnosis for ADHD has brought me is um, you know, I am who I am, and my brain works the way it works. And I spent my life fighting it without realizing what I was fighting. Now I'm like, that's just that's who I am. Yes, I have a responsibility to take accountability for the things that I do and try and be the best person I can be. But I'm not going to hide from or um, be shameful of the way that my brain works, because that's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I've just got a brain that processes things differently to the world it's designed for. When I talk to people, I often use the analogy of it's a bit like my brain runs on Apple software, but it's operating in a Windows environment, Microsoft Windows environment. And if you take Apple software and try and run it on a PC, it really struggles. It doesn't work properly. It kind of clunks its way through. There's nothing wrong with Apple. Apple's a great product, but if you take it and put it on the wrong machine, it doesn't work properly. So there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just operating the way I'm not designed for. And actually the work is about how do I make it easier for my Apple software to run in that Microsoft environment, rather than saying, well, the software's broken, because it's not.
Yeah. I love that as well. It's just, yeah, it's just, I love an analogy. I love a metaphor. I like
Yeah.
anything like that kind of explains it, not just to other people that have got ADHD or that are neurodivergent, but just in
Yeah.
a way that everyone can understand, and that
Yeah.
and they're very simple, and they're very easy to understand for everybody to understand, aren't they? So,
Absolutely. I mean, I do a lot of work. I mentioned that I left my job in advertising to now work and run my own business that helps organisations with neurodiverse or neurodiversity within their organisation. And I talk a lot about performance work, and I know it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And often neurodivergent people will struggle at work, and it will be seen as a performance issue. You see high churn and that kind of thing within organizations. And when I talk to companies, I'll try and reframe it with, if you had a door that's designed badly, you don't go and fix the people using the door, you fix the door.
Yeah.
It's the door that's the problem. So when you're at work, if you've got an environment that is difficult for neurodivergent employees, so lots of input, lots of vague tasks, or unclear feedback, or things aren't easy to start, or there's huge kind of environmental kind of overwhelm with noise, etc. If you throw all that in there, you're creating all this friction for people, neurodivergent people, that makes it harder for them to bring their capability to bear. So that might look like a people problem or a performance problem, but it's not. It's a design problem within work. And this principle of, fix the friction, don't fix the person, is something that I talk about a lot. And I think that really resonates throughout my life of, again, I'm not broken, I don't need fixing, but there's stuff around me that causes it to be more difficult for me. And that's the thing to focus on. It's how do I change my environment? How do I change the way I input with things so that I don't feel like I'm failing? I feel like I'm being myself and I'm adapting, or the world is adapting to me.
So, just a little bit of a side tangent now. So, the businesses that you've worked with, do they? Do you think that they take on board everything you say? Are they kind of are they welcoming the information and then implementing changes?
Yeah, so I think that's a journey that we're on. I think, I'm fortunate. I've worked with some great organisations that are passionate about wanting to affect change. I think first thing I'll say, there's a great bit of research that came out recently from City and Guilds, and they do this annual neurodiversity index report. And there's a stat in there that says that about 80% of companies that they interviewed about 500 companies, about 80% of them think that they're doing really well with neurodiversity awareness within their organisation. So, big tick. We've had people come in and talk to us, and everyone's aware of what's going on. And then when they interviewed the staff, only 32% of staff said that they feel psychologically safe being themselves and opening up about their neurodiversity or neurodivergence at work. So that's a big gap between awareness and action.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's aware that we need to kind of move the conversation on from awareness talks and awareness kind of events to, what does this mean? How do we give people tools and frameworks they can use to actually bring this to life? So I think that's a journey that we're on, and we've got a fairly long way to go on that, I think. But I think the other bit, which I was just kind of alluding to with the performance thing, is it's also about saying, it's not about neurodiverse people struggling at work being a people problem. It is sometimes the environment, or it is sometimes the way that organizations have 1,700 different ways in which you can communicate, or constant chat apps, or back-to-back meetings, which can be overwhelming, and etc. So sometimes it's about the way the work is structured and designed that causes the issue. And actually the neurodivergent people are just the early warning system, because they feel it earlier and more intense. So actually you look at it and go, this isn't about making neurodiversity better in our organisation. This is about making our organisation better, and our neurodiverse employees are the ones that help us see it sooner and see it clearer.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I often have thought in the last year that, there's lots of places, lots of businesses, lots of education, maybe universities, schools.
Yep.
There's lots and lots of places that say that they are inclusive of everybody and everyone. It's the same thing, everybody and everyone. But the problem with that is if you're clumping everything together under the one umbrella term of the social model of disability, as in neurodivergent, like umbrella thing, which includes lots of different things, not just ADHD, but autism, mental health problems, dyslexia, dyscalculia, but you put in them all together. And one of the main things that I have regularly talked about with my friends is you cannot be fully inclusive unless you can make reasonable adjustments for each person that are tailored to their individual needs under that umbrella term. And when I've said that to some people, they've looked at me as though to say, where do we even start? Because I don't know about you, but I'm really good at reading people's body language. I could almost tell you what they're thinking. And I went quiet for a minute. And I was just like, yeah, like, where do you start? And but I like the fact that you're already starting the conversations, because I think as ADHD people, like, I would struggle. I used to struggle working in an open office because there's lots of people, there's lots of noises, lots of things going on. And either that, or either I had to put like noise cancelling headphones on, which I almost had to fight to get because they were like, they're not usually, we don't need, anyway, don't get me started on that. But, noise cancelling earphones, or I would just get up and walk around all the time. And then I'd get told off for keep getting up out of my desk. And I'm like, and this was before I'd been diagnosed. But it's just, there's lots of things. And I do think specific, like us ADHD adults, I think that we have so much to offer. But ADHD people, we offer skills, we've got things that we can do that maybe neurotypical people can't do, but we just need the right environment to feel safe enough to be able to be ourselves. And also self-advocacy. So for me, it's been a journey of finding out what are my strengths, and then how can I harness them into, at the moment, I'm studying psychology. I'm doing a degree in psychology online, 100% online. And it's been about kind of looking at my strengths and then thinking, okay, so I'm creative, I'm honest, I'm hardworking, I can't think of anything else at the moment. I love for learning. These things I never even really knew. I found these out after I'd been diagnosed a few years ago. Started focusing just on my strengths, and then I've kind of used my strengths in my studies and in my everyday life now. And I just think as an ADHD employee, is that right? Employee. Yeah. So if you're working for someone else, basically, you've got so much to offer, but unfortunately, you're not always able to kind of thrive, and then everything just becomes a bit of a battle where you have to constantly keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So it's nice to hear from you that there are companies that are starting to kind of move past the awareness and into the growth.
There absolutely are, without question. So there's still a long way to go, there's still a journey to go on. And I think just a couple of things on, love what you're saying there about the importance of it, and a couple of things to kind of build on that. One is the last role I had, I was very, very fortunate. I had a very understanding boss that I spoke to earlier about my ADHD and kind of how it manifests. And I said something to her that really resonated for her and really helped me, which was, I said, judge me on what I do, not how I do it. My methods and my ways might be unconventional, and I might do, there might be times when I do 5 minutes work in a day, and there might be days when I do 7 days work in an hour. But judge me on the output, not on the process. And let me, let my ADHD be its thing and kind of benefit from that. But I think that plays into, I think part of the challenge is, as a society, if we keep it nice and structured and everybody does the same thing, it's really easy to manage. And ADHD challenges that and says, I don't work that way. The Microsoft and Apple example. In organizations, when you go to them and say, reasonable adjustments or different ways of working, they often see it as a cost. They see it as this is difficult, it's going to cost me time, it's going to cost me effort, it's going to cost me money. And they don't look at it and say, this is an investment in taking the capability of this person and maximizing it, because we're reducing the things that stop that capability coming through. They don't look at it and go, this is about retention. If I can make these small adjustments, my staff will stay longer and I won't have to carry the cost of replacing that member of staff who's left because of these reasons. So it will take time, but reframing that and saying, this isn't about a cost, this isn't about a hassle for you, this is about an investment in a person and an understanding that there are multiple ways in which things can be done. Judge me by what I do, not how I do it. I think that journey is people are going on that, but I think there's still a long way to go. And I think the best way that I can explain the challenge that we perhaps face as ADHD is in the misunderstanding of our brains in that kind of context. I actually heard a professor online talk about it a few months ago when he was talking about giving ADHD kids extra time in exams. And he basically said, the standard default, you've got a 3-hour exam, ADHD kids will get 30 minutes extra. He said, which is the most pointless thing in the world you can do because we're time blind. Giving me 30 minutes extra means nothing. It doesn't achieve anything. And it's the worst way of addressing an ADHD need. It's a standard default answer to mental health or disability. Well, give me 30 minutes extra. So what you should actually do is you should give them the same 3 hours that everybody else has, but they have the ability to stop the clock at any point and go, I've done 20 minutes. I'm going to stop for 2 minutes. I'm going to spin around the room, get rid of my energy, get my focus back and come back and start the clock again.
Yeah.
So I don't get any longer, but I get to work in a way that works for my brain where I can do start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, rather than just 3 hours solid. And I think that mindset, and I love that analogy, and I think that mindset of getting employers to think less about the cost and the challenge and it breaks our current way of working. I think more about how do I maximize the potential of this great person? How do I remove the friction and remove the challenges that are in their way? Here's great ways of doing that. Noise cancelling headphones, being able to have fidget toys in the office, be able to work more from home, be able to have quiet spaces, be able to put agendas on meetings before you send them. Having clearer ways of defining how you work with chat apps, defaulting to 25 instead of 30-minute meetings. No, there's an endless list of things that you can do, and it isn't actually that difficult once you start doing it.
And a lot of it probably won't cost a lot of money, if any. It's so I love that. And I think with my university, I've done a lot of advocacy, not just for myself, but for other students.
Yeah.
Everyone knows who I am now because,
Great.
I've just made a bit of a nuisance, maybe in a good way, a bit of a nuisance but with myself. But it's like, someone asked me a few years ago, like, why do I do that? Why do I advocate for underrepresented people, not just in my university, but in society? And I'm like, but why wouldn't I? Like, what you're basically asking me, why do I do it? Because if like I'm with yourself, if we don't do the work, then there's no change is going to happen.
Absolutely. And I'd also say it's not even about making a nuisance of yourself. It's about highlighting a situation that can easily be resolved that perhaps people haven't thought about resolving, or they haven't had the time, or they haven't had the desire to think about it. And you're saying, actually, this is causing an issue. There's a really simple remedy here. Let's engage with it. So all you're doing is you're bringing to the surface the stuff that these people should be thinking about, but perhaps haven't had the time or the experience to do so. So I wouldn't say it's being a nuisance. It's actually you're doing a really positive thing. You're actually bringing awareness to the situation that hopefully over time will lead to change.
Yeah. I mean, I don't always see the changes because I'm obviously not employed by the university, but there is lots of things that I do know. And I'm not the type of person that is going to sit here and say to you, oh yeah, I find it really hard to boast. I don't boast. I'm more like I work away in the background and I'll make a bit of noise over there, or I'll send this email if I don't
Yep.
agree. Well, and I do know, like, the higher up senior management within the university, because it's a private university, and I never say who they are because I don't think that's appropriate. It's where I study and that's it. But I think with the higher up senior management team within the university, like, they're so fascinated for me because I just say it how it is. And I don't just say, right, this is the problem. I say, this is the problem, but here's the solution. So it's, implementing just small changes. Like, for instance, like you've said, with university, I'm automatically eligible for a short-term extension, which is a week, which sometimes is amazing if there's physical health stuff going on for me and I can't make that deadline. But with my ADHD, it's not good. And I know a lot of the ADHD students do automatically trigger that at the beginning of each study block, but I don't. And I don't trigger it unless I desperately know I'm going to need it, because all that happens is I'll procrastinate getting going, and the hyper focus won't kick in until like 2 or 3 days before the deadline. So to me, it's kind of counterproductive to get it before I even need it. And it's like, they're like, oh, wow, that's actually quite clever. And I'm like, yeah, okay, if you say so.
Yeah,
But it's just a little kind of ADHD hack. That it's like, if I know that deadline's there, I'm working towards the extended deadline, which is a week after it. I'm just not going to get going, or I'm not going to focus on it
absolutely.
as much as I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a fairly common saying that ADHD, it requires interest, urgency, or clarity to be able to start doing something.
Yeah.
And if one of those three things isn't present, then it's not going to happen. So your point there about the extra week makes perfect sense. Of it doesn't matter whether the deadline's tomorrow or in a week's time. For me, that's a deadline, and I will run up to that deadline, and I'll use the urgency to drive the action. Um, that's not necessarily the right way to do it. I can do it within the time frame. I've got that ability. So to your point, why would you change it? Why would you extend that? Have that there as a backup if you need it. But it's more about how do I make the task of starting easier by building in false urgency by breaking it up and saying I'm going to do this week and this week, or instead of looking and going, I've got this big project, you just go, what's the first thing I need to do? Because ADHD is a starting problem, not a doing problem. Once you start it, you get going. So if you can make the start easier, away you go. So hacking it for the way that works for your brain rather than just taking the easy option in front of you, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel very lucky to be studying in the UK, because we do get access to disabled students allowance, DSA. In higher education, in some colleges as well, you can get access to it, I think. I'm not sure. And I do feel extremely grateful to have that, because although I'm on my sixth study skills tutor. It's been a bit of a difficult journey, because when I got to the third or the fourth one, I was like, this has got to be a me problem. The fact that we weren't gelling, I didn't feel like I was getting out of it what I really needed. But a few years ago, I couldn't really articulate to anyone what I needed, because I'd never studied,
Yeah,
as a distance learner, 100% online. So I'm, just going to kind of own it and say, I actually thought it was me that had the problem with all the tutors, and it wasn't. It wasn't, we just didn't get on. So the lady that I've just been allocated recently is an absolute godsend, because she's got ADHD, and now what we set, weekly tasks. So I meet with her for 1 hour on a Monday, and we set the tasks I'm going to do for the next week. Also breaking them tasks down into chunks, so bullet
yeah,
pointed, so I know exactly. So for this week, it's just going through lesson 2, because I'm doing forensic psychology and clinical and health psychology, 2
yeah,
modules, which is the first for me. Because I've only ever done one, but I'm giving it a go, because they're the last 2 of level 5. Sorry, this is a
yeah.
complete tangent, and I
No, it's all
probably
good.
forget the point I was going to try and make. The new lady, and so we sit on Mondays, and we have like an hour session. We go through things. She's even started kind of asking me a few questions of what I'm studying about, and she's done a little reading herself, so she understands, like, forensic psychology, clinical and health. Thankfully, she's done a PhD in psychology, on mature, um, education returners. So like myself, I'm 50, and I've just gone back into 2 years ago, gone back into education. So she knows a lot about psychology, which really helps. But it's just the simple fact of, right, this is what we're going to be doing during the meeting that we have on a Monday. This is what we're going to implement. And so it's like, even during the day, like each day, like, what am I going to do on what day? And she doesn't
Yeah,
just ask me questions about my studies. She's like, what else have you got going on? in the background. So do your work, and I obviously said the podcast and, and different things that I do. And it's just in 3 hours, she's made such a huge difference to my study experience by just simply meeting me where I am now. But obviously, when this process started, the tutors would say to me, "What do you need from me?" And I'd be like, I don't know, because
The worst question to ask someone with
yeah,
university is,
exactly, and
what do you,
it's yeah, it, it's and it wasn't my fault that all of the other tutors didn't really work. It's just that the relationship, it's like anyone. You could get a counsellor, you could go to a therapist, you could even go to your doctors, medical professionals, and some of them you get on really well with and you feel comfortable with straight away. And then other times it's like, yeah, I'm just going to book an appointment with someone else. But I just think as an ADHD adult, that can sometimes be difficult for us to keep going back and saying, no, this is not still working for me. Can we change again? But thankfully I got there. So hopefully,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're touching on a few points there. And you said earlier about ADHD radar, and you kind of gravitate towards people who have ADHD and your friends. You look at your friend group when you've been diagnosed, you're like, oh, you've all got ADHD.
Yeah.
I think there's a common understanding or a common appreciation for how things work. I'm an ADHD coach now, and an important part of the work I do initially is to look for that fit with people. Because to your point, if there isn't a good kind of connection or synergy or understanding, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And whether that be coaching or counselling or the educational support that you get, if that's not there, it's not going to work. And I think that's particularly acute when you've got someone with ADHD and someone without ADHD, because a neurotypical will think in a neurotypical way, do the task. It needs doing, do it now. Whereas an ADHD person will go, but that's not how it works, because that's not how our brain works. It's not just do the task. I need to break that task down, and I need to put it in a structure that works. And I need to think about what's going to get them started. And to make that easy, I need to think about the emotional impact and the environmental pressures that are on them. It's a much bigger, more complex picture. The output's the same, but unless you have that understanding, it's very hard to articulate back and forward what some of those challenges are. So the fact that you've had to work through and find the right person, but the right person you found has ADHD, kind of underlines that point, I think, of it's got to be right. And I'd advocate everybody that is getting, whether it's counselling, coaching, educational support, whatever it is, to be confident in saying, I need something that works for me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no point doing it. It needs to be something that works with my brain.
Yeah. And I think maybe a few of the other coaches did have ADHD, but we just didn't really get on, I don't think.
And it's part of it, it's
Yeah.
we're all different. We've all got different ways of doing things, and ADHD brain's different. You met one person with ADHD, you met one person with ADHD, and our experiences and our type of ADHD can impact that. So you've got to find that synergy that works, and be confident to ask for that, as you've done, and you've proven that if you keep going, you end up with the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that, because it's really empowering to kind of, even though I had to do it 6 times over, it's just, yeah, just, I suppose, testament not only to, not necessarily to myself, but my university, my disability advisor was amazing. Like, she actually helped, and she reached out to the companies, and, she did a lot of the heavy lifting for me.
Yep.
And she's so understanding, and just is just, you just meet people and you just know that you're safe with them. I don't know if she's got ADHD or not, but she's just such, like, the empathy oozes out of her, and I'm just like, you just like, yeah, I feel comfortable with her. And I went back to her and I was like, you're never going to guess what? And she's like, okay, let's go again. And it was just, but literally just that was that one thing. And I was just, yeah, but finally, like in 3 hours, which is the time I've had with the new study skills tutor, in 3 hours, yeah, it's completely and utterly transformed, literally. I think kind of the reframe, I suppose, around that is I had to learn maybe what I needed. And I didn't know
Yeah.
that 2 years ago because I'd never studied
Yeah.
as a distance learner. I'd never never done any university degree studying higher education. And I think it's, I've had to kind of learn what works well and what doesn't work well, and then kind of just play to them
Yeah.
strengths.
In a funny way, it's a bit like dating, isn't it? You date people to find people that the person that you get on best with, and when you do, it just clicks into place.
Yeah.
And that's not a strange analogy, but that's how our brains work. But it is, you've got to, you've got to. At the end of the day, it would be wrong for you to just accept what's in front of you that didn't work, just because it's the easy thing to do. That's not right. That's not going to help you. It's not going to be beneficial with the person you're working with. No, we all need to, particularly neurodivergents, need to be more forward in going, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And when somebody says, what do you need? Push back and go, this is where I'm finding it difficult. How can we work together to resolve this? Rather than just going, I'm just going to give you a list of things that I want. Because again, that changes it from this is a hassle and this is a cost to this is a way of getting the best out of our employees or best out of our students or whatever. So we should all be a bit more. I know it's difficult, but we should all be more like you in being confident and forthright in, it's not working. I need something different.
Yeah.
Let's look again.
Yeah. And I think as well, like with my personal reasonable adjustments within my university, they have been created with me and the disability advisor. And it was the only thing that was offered when I started in September 23 was just a week's extension. And as the time's gone on and as the more experience I've had, my reasonable adjustments have been implemented. And then they've only implemented and been created because I knew what I eventually started seeing what I needed. And we've worked together to kind of to put them in place, and then some of them have been rolled out throughout the whole of the university. And it's like that, although I don't see that change necessarily, I know that that's still happening in the background because it's just really simple things. Longer tutorials with a module tutor, so they're normally 15 minutes and I can have up to an hour once a week if there's availability, because a lot of distance learning, they want you to kind of write on discussion forums and stuff, and I can't, like, my biggest challenge within my studies is written words. So I struggle with that. So rather than having that kind of written feedback by week, I get to talk to somebody, and then we can talk about what my understandings are and things like that. And then you get that kind of feedback loop, but in a way that's really good for me, rather than me having to write these things on these discussion forums, which I absolutely hate.
I get that.
And it's so, and they're just really simple things. So a noted feedback. So on the document that I submit, I get the feedback actually like on the document. It's still anonymous marking, but the feedback. So then I can join them dots, because if you send me my grade with the feedback, I've completely and utterly forgotten what I even wrote in that assignment, because it's gone, because it's not completely gone. But so if you're then sending me specific feedback for bits that I've written, I can't join. It takes me so long to be able to, so it's pointless giving me feedback, if that makes sense. So a noted feedback was one of the ones. And I think hopefully they might be scrapping the discussion forum soon, because I'm just like, and it's not just me that feels like that. There's a lot of other students that don't necessarily just have ADHD but are neurodivergent, and they just don't like that kind of that feedback loop with written words. So
It's case in point of the to go back to the Apple and Microsoft thing. The university has written has got a Microsoft environment where you do these discussion forums. The Apple software is going, but it doesn't work. I can't run in that environment. So it's that willingness to go, well, maybe we need to change the environment, or maybe we need to give better connectors to make that software run out of line. We need to change the way that we do this, and have it work for everybody, or allow people to have adaptations so that it can work for them. And as you say, sometimes it's really simple stuff. But it's the awareness and the willingness to embrace it and make those changes that matters. And hopefully we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, and that's why I continue with the advocacy stuff that I do within my university and outside as well. Like it's
Yeah.
just, like we've all got kind of, it's where my purpose is. Like it's not that I don't like fighting as in physically fighting, but I do like a bit of an activist kind of campaign where we're all going to get together and, you see something that's not right and you're going to do something about it. That is a little bit of me. And yeah, I just
You
love.
see the day for me. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love it. I'm sorry to say, but I do. I love it.
No, but if it's the right cause and the right reasons, loving it, nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah,
Nothing changes unless people speak up and start to push for a better way of doing things.
yeah. But yeah, so that's just where my purpose is. It's always been where my purpose is, but even more so when it comes to education now, because I
Yeah.
can see the value of getting an education earlier in life. There's a value for me to have it now, but obviously being a returning student that had never done any degree level training before, it was a little bit of a shell shock for me to start with. But slowly over the last couple of years, I've kind of found my feet with it all, and then started advocating quite quickly because I'm just if I see a problem, then I my brain likes to solve it. And if it's not
You sound like
solved
my wife.
straight away, then I'm gonna keep going on about it and on about it and on about it until
Yeah.
it's resolved. So yeah,
Yeah.
the
George's.
university, I think some of the staff love me, some of them are like, oh no, here she goes again.
But we're not putting this. We're not put on the world to on the earth to be liked by everybody. So if change happens because you upset a few people along the way, it's not a bad thing, is it? As long as the change happens. So, fantastic that's a passion for you and something that you enjoy, and clearly making a difference. And I think that's the more people that are willing and able, neurodiverse people that are willing and able to speak up and speak out, the quicker things will evolve and change, and that can only be a positive thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for saying that anyway. So I've just got maybe a few more questions. I don't know.
Yeah,
We're coming up to like an hour. I don't know. Are we? I don't even know what's going on today.
yeah, we're 2 minutes to 3.
Yeah, yes, sorry. I don't know what your availability is, but I won't keep you for
I'm right
much
about 10
longer.
minutes. Yeah, about 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just kind of wanted to maybe ask you around how have you found parenting as a late diagnosed ADHD person?
Yeah. So my twins were diagnosed first, and they were 15 when they were diagnosed. So a lot of the time that I was parenting them, I didn't know they had ADHD. I didn't know I had ADHD. So, I look back now, and sometimes I look back and think there were moments when there was a lot of kind of clashing of heads and differing styles, shall we say. I think post-diagnosis for them and for me, this realization that parents are, it's the first time they're doing it. I often joke, it's a well-known saying, your parents, every day is the first day of them parenting in that moment. So it's always a learning thing. I look back now and think there's lots of things that I perhaps would have done differently if I'd known, but I can't change that. So there's no point dwelling on that. It's now about how do I parent moving forward with the knowledge that I have, and how do I give more time and space to the differences that we all are as ADHDers. And I've got 4 kids, 3 sons and a stepson. We've got 1 hyperactive. We've got 1 combined, and we've got 2 inattentive, and very different styles.
Yeah.
So having a more having a deeper understanding of how ADHD kind of impacts or affects their kind of day-to-day mood or approach to things or whatever, and not being so prescriptive or it must look like this. I think that's the big change that's happened. Flexibility is a much bigger part of parenting post-diagnosis than it was pre-diagnosis. But I think it goes the other way as well, of being able to say to my kids, I do get emotional about things, I do get upset about things, I do have this water balloon that blows up big and quickly, and you shouldn't try and pop it because you're just going to get wet, kind of thing. So giving them feedback and saying, I won't always get it right, and there'll be times when I am emotional about this, but understand that and work with me. So I think that that kind of two-way communication part, I think, has evolved really positively post-diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
I think parenting ADHD kids can be a challenge because they've got ADHD, but it can be a challenge as well in the school system because the school system is designed for neurotypicals.
Yep.
And you always want your kids to do well.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're trying to force the square peg in the round hole because you want them to do well. Instead of saying to the school, we need to make more square holes. And I think that's a challenge that I imagine a lot of ADHD parents will face. And it's a hard one. You talk about your advocacy at kind of higher education. I think there's lots of people out there trying to do that at primary and secondary education as well. And I think it is a challenge, but there's so much more we can be doing there.
If there's anyone that's listening to this that would like me to get involved, I'm happy to I was going to say hit, but I don't mean, I don't mean physically.
Bring your energy to bear.
Yes. Yeah. I'm happy to support, let's say, rather than hit. So just maybe a last question. Do you think your experiences have been very different because you're a man rather than has it been more challenging for you to kind of talk about your experiences because you're a man, maybe around your mental health, maybe around your diagnosis?
That's a big question for the last one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. Very happy to answer. I think I'd probably answer that in two perspectives. I think generally receiving an ADHD diagnosis as a man, it's been easier than if I were a woman. We have done such a disservice to females over the years in not understanding how ADHD manifests for women and how it's impacted by things like hormones, etc. We've got a long way to go to address that. And I've spoken with a lot of females that I've worked with going through diagnosis, and the pressure and expectation on them is significant, and that's a challenge. So I would say my experience there in some respects is easier because I'm a man, and it's kind of, well, it's okay, men get ADHD, etc. The other side of it, and the point you touched on about mental health and challenges there, being a very emotional man in an environment where, as sad as it is to say, it's still seen as a weakness if you cry. It has been difficult. But I was fortunate. I started therapy, counsellor, about 3 years ago with a very amazing woman who is also got ADHD, and spent a lot of time kind of work on that. So I actually feel now fairly comfortable being the emotional person that I am, because I've worked on that and I've spent time on that and I've got support on that. But I think more generally, yes, showing emotions, particularly softer emotions as a man, is something that's still seen as a negative. And when you have ADHD and those emotions are stronger than typical, that can be a real challenge to kind of have to process and deal with. And your men squash their emotions, ADHD men squash those emotions that are 10 times bigger. And that can be challenging.
Maybe I should have asked you that question right at the beginning.
No, it's all good.
But it's just a fascination of mine because, there's the male guests either have struggled because exactly like you have, or they've not necessarily felt safe to be themselves. They've had issues with their mental health over the years as well, but they've not really been able to talk about that because they feel ashamed. Like you've said, men are not meant to be as sensitive, and is it toxic masculine, whatever that masculinity or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why I kind of wanted to ask you, because I think even though, women have not been diagnosed and not even been known about, it's like even men that are diagnosed sometimes, even around your mental health or neurotypical people, it depends what environment you're in as to whether
yeah.
you can feel safe enough to kind of just be you. And I think that's such a shame. And I'm really grateful that you came to talk to me today, because we need to get the full picture of what men's experiences are like as well. So,
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Men are taught to say squash emotions and squash feelings, um, and uh, that is counterproductive to ADHD, or counterintuitive to ADHD. We're expressive people. We've got big empathy and big emotions. So yeah, I know a lot of men that ADHD men that struggle to be able to express that.
yeah,
Um, I actually saw something this morning, very apt. What is it that makes the cry of a man so weak? Was something I saw this morning. This kind of, why do we look upon men expressing emotion as a failure?
yeah,
And I think that's perhaps a feeling that a lot of men will feel, is that failure of, I'm not being a man if I'm expressing my emotions. That's wrong. In
yeah,
the same way, the expectations we put on women, and the way we kind of cast aside anxiety and depression and all these kind of things. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter, does it? It's the same failing. I
yeah,
don't think there's any one's worse than the other. I think they're different challenges, and we as a society need to recognise that and support in both ways.
yeah.
So I'm all for men speaking up, and always happy to talk to people that want to speak up,
Um,
that want to be able to express.
I'll post the link to your coaching website
Thank
if you've
you.
got one. So
Yes,
if
yeah,
there is any listeners that are listening who would like a little bit of support from you, I'll direct them towards you. But I think maybe one last thing is there anything that you'd like to say to people that are waiting to be diagnosed, or newly diagnosed, or just a little bit curious? Like, is there anything that you'd like them to, like, if you back before you were diagnosed, is there anything that you'd like them to know?
yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, I think I'll say the one thing that I say. No, I'm so fortunate to do ADHD coaching. I meet some amazing people, and I get such a wonderful joy out of working with them and helping them start to understand their brains. The thing I say to everybody at the start of coaching is, you're not broken. So if there's one thing I'd love everybody, every neurodiverse person, every ADHD person, whether they're aware of it, curious, waiting for a diagnosis, got a diagnosis early, late, whatever they're in, I'd love everybody just to start believing, repeatedly saying to themselves and believing this kind of, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah,
You've got a wonderful brain that is perfect as it is. Your challenges are driven by the fact you're trying to operate it in a different environment. So let's fix that. Let's not fix you,
yeah,
because you're not broken.
yeah. There's nothing
So
to
that's the
fix, is there?
line to fix. You just need to change the inputs into the world.
Yeah,
That's it. And that's easy.
yeah. That's amazing. Thank you, Stu. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
if your sons would like to come and talk to me, I don't know if they would, but if they would,
We could
then
try. Yeah.
you
We
can
get the
ask
whole
them,
family on.
because I've not had any young
Um,
people on yet, because your sons
yeah.
actually would have been classed as late diagnosed because they're in the teenage years by the time it was
Yes.
recognised. So
I imagine my the one that's got the hyperactive element of it. I imagine he'll probably say yes. He'll talk to anybody about everything. He was jumping off a crane doing bungee jumping 2 weeks ago.
oh my
So
lord.
I can't
Okay.
do that. But
Well,
yes,
I mean, by all
I'm sure.
means, if any of them are comfortable to come and talk to me, I'd love to talk to some young people about their experiences.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, just send
yeah,
him the link if you would be interested.
yeah.
I would really like that, actually.
Maybe try and connect the twins together.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's a flat out no, then I'm happy with that. But it would be nice to have some younger voices on
Mm,
here, so then we can, the younger listeners that need to kind of hear their messages, the positive
yeah,
messages.
absolutely.
But for today, anyway, thank you so much for your time, Stu. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed
Thank you.
talking to you.
Yeah.
To the listeners, I will post the links to Stu's website, his coaching website, and George's Purple website as well. Let's not forget that.
That's the most important one.
Exactly. So if you're wondering what that means, if you go a few episodes back, you'll be able to find a little bit more about Purple and the amazing platform that George, I'm sure you helped as well, Stu, set it all up, being in advertising. But yeah, for today, thank you so much. To my listeners, please follow, like, share if these conversations have resonated with you. If you would like to be a guest, please reach out to me because I'm happy to talk to anyone and everyone. So yeah, that just leaves me a huge thank you. So yeah, thank you for your time today, Stu, and yeah, much appreciated.